Hey, this is Mark Long with Driven to Ride, and before we get started real quick, I just wanted to let you know that we have some pretty big plans this summer. I can't give away any details just yet, but here's a hint. I will say they're going to be fast, like MotoGP fast. And hey, if you want to experience MotoGP up close and personal, the only race in the USA this year is at Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas from April 12th to the 14th. And if you can't make it there in person, you can subscribe to the MotoGP live streams at MotoGP.com. Anyway, I'm super excited to bring you with on some of the adventures we've got planned, but until then, let's start the show. Neither rain, nor sleet, nor hail shall keep the postal workers from their appointed rounds. Nor shall it keep Carolyn, better known as Doodle on a motorcycle, from finishing an epic adventure. Doodle is always tackling her next adventure head-on, whether she's heading to Sturgis, crisscrossing the U.S. while avoiding dust storms and flood warnings, or something more low-key, like, training with some of the motorcycle world's creme de la creme. Think Jocelyn Snow and Jerry Palladino, to name a few. Plus, she shares it all with us on her wildly successful YouTube channel, which, believe it or not, she started the day she bought her first motorcycle. Talk about jumping off the deep end. Not only does Doodle showcase her successes, but also her struggles and putting in the work as well. Like when she committed to lifting her 500-pound Triumph Tiger 900 up from its side 100 times a day for a month straight. And what's more impressive, she does it all with a smile. This is Doodle on a Motorcycle. I'm your host, Mark Long, and you're listening to Driven to Ride. Doodle on a Motorcycle, you are on Driven to Ride. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your time and, excited to talk to you and get into the world of Carolyn / Doodle on a Motorcycle. So
thank you for having me.
So let's just start at the beginning. What do most people know you for? What's your claim to fame, as it were?
Claim to fame. I'm trying to figure that out myself. But I started posting videos on YouTube since the day I got my first bike and have pretty much just been recording that journey since day one. I just wanted to talk to someone about motorcycles so badly. I was so excited about it, but I didn't know anyone who rode. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I had already been watching a bunch of YouTube videos on motorcycling. That was kind of how my resource and how I learned about riding. And it just seemed like a natural place to continue the conversation.
Yeah, for sure. So if you didn't know anybody who started riding or who was riding, how did you kind of get into motorcycling?
I really just took the MSF course on a whim. I think I had posted on my Facebook, does anyone have a motorcycle? Can I ride it? And I obviously had no experience, but somebody on there told me about the MSF course. They said you can take a 2-day course. They'll provide a bike, a helmet, in class, and it'll be on a track and with instructors. And I thought that sounds perfect. Just completely non-committal. I didn't want to buy my own bike. I just wanted to try it out for a weekend, like skydiving. Like you do that one weekend and then you move on with your life. And that was my plan.
Yeah. I kind of just do it on a whim. And where did that whim come from, though? I mean, did something like in your life kind of spark like, oh, I want to ride a motorcycle, or did you maybe see somebody on the road and like, man, that looks like fun?
Yeah, I was just newly single, and I had been in a relationship for a long time, and I hadn't done any of these random ideas that pop into my head because I was just in the relationship. So I thought, you know what? Let me do all those things that I have been wanting to do for the past 8 years and just never done them. And I did a bunch of scuba diving that summer. I learned photography. I did some traveling. Tried a bunch of other stuff that I can't even remember at this point, but motorcycling was one of the things that stuck.
Yeah. And it just sounds like you really just started living your life.
Yeah, it took over. I mean, it's my job now.
Right. Yeah.
I quit my office job and now I ride for a living.
Yeah. It's a lot of people's dream jobs. So, which is very cool. So, but when you took the MSF class, was there a moment that you remember that you were hooked and you knew that motorcycling was going to be the thing for you?
I don't think so, because I think even though I loved it so much, I hadn't committed to it yet. So after the MSF course, I thought, I looked into maybe I could just keep taking classes, because the idea of buying my own bike just seemed like such a big commitment and so far-fetched from why I had originally gone there in the first place. It was kind of like if you try skydiving and then all of a sudden you want to buy your own plane and your own all the gear you need for that and then start doing it every weekend. What? That seems too much. That's kind of my thinking. So I originally started looking into, well, maybe I can just rent a bike. Maybe I can just keep taking classes. And all those things seem to rack up a lot of money and didn't have a bunch of availability for people who had no experience riding.
Oh, sure.
So I thought, all right, I guess if I want to keep riding, I'm going to have to buy my own bike. So I did maybe about 2 months of research, both online, just watching a bunch of bike reviews, YouTube videos on like buying your first bike, and in person, just going to just about every dealership within like a 1 hour radius of me, and just sitting on a bunch of bikes, talking to the staff there until finally making a decision. I bought a Suzuki S40 Boulevard. Little 1-cylinder 650cc cruiser was my first bike.
Yeah, a little thumper.
It was
Yeah.
definite thumper.
And so you said you started posting on YouTube like immediately when you bought that Boulevard.
Yeah, my first video was actually me in my car talking about how I picked up my bike, and I just showed pictures of it. That's was a lot of my YouTube videos. It was really me just talking to the camera and then maybe showing some related pictures. It's kind of changed into more vlogs and then more like episodic format.
Yeah. Kind of almost have like the Doodle show now, you know, it's you go to all these trips and we'll get to those in a couple of minutes here. But one thing, as I was doing some research, I heard you were into martial arts back in the day, and that's pretty intense. It can be.
Yes, so much fun.
And some people, I'd say that jumping into motorcycling and then simultaneously posting it on YouTube as you go along is also kind of intense. So is that kind of something that has like a common theme through your life, that you're just going to jump in and just go for it and see what happens?
I guess so. I guess whatever I do, I get very obsessive with. So for instance, when I got into martial arts, my plan also wasn't to just start doing jiu-jitsu for the next 7 years. My plan was, I just want the skill of self-defense, and I want to be able to defend myself, basically. And I took like a women's self-defense class, and I thought, okay, this is pretty useless. 1 or 2 hours of this that's not going to help me against like even just 150-pound man.
Sure.
So I figured, I need something that will become second nature, that will be a skill, something I do for years. So actually at the time, all I knew about was Taekwondo. So that's what I first enrolled in. I do not recommend that as a form of self-defense, at least not for the short term. And then eventually I just kind of stumbled upon, I met somebody who recommended jiu-jitsu to me, saying it was very leverage based and really good for a smaller opponent against a larger opponent, because it's so leverage based. It's not strength based. So I thought, oh, that sounds perfect for women's self-defense, but it's also perfect for a lot of guys that were there, were very like had engineering minds, were kind of like, at least the school I went to, because I didn't go to competition schools. I went to more self-defense based schools.
Okay.
And a lot of the guys there, I would say, were probably like, were very intelligent, very methodical people, a lot of like software engineers there. And those kind of people just love jiu-jitsu because it's like chess with your body.
Yeah, it's kind of like the exact opposite of the sitting in front of a computer and programming or being theoretical. It's 100% practical. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but it's, I guess, similar. It's still methodical, but it's methodical with your body instead of just your mind.
Yeah, like you said, chess with your body. That kind of makes sense. Do you have any, or have you noticed any similarities between jiu-jitsu and riding motorcycles?
I think so. Just the fact that a lot of techniques look easier than they actually are. Like they actually require a lot more skill to do. And but the skills are actually, once you know them, it's actually pretty simple. So for instance, like the first time I learned how to like flip a 200-pound man in jiu-jitsu, I saw it physically. I'm like, I'm not going to be able to do that. Like, and especially at the time, I was even lighter than I am now. I think of probably 100, somewhere between 105, 110 pounds.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm just under 5'4". And I saw that. I'm like, that's literally going to be impossible. But I just did exactly as the instructor told me. He's like, put your hand here, put your hip here, do this, and then try it. I'm like, all right. And then I did it, and the guy just fell over. I even remember apologizing to him. I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't know you'd fall so hard and so fast. Like, it just took so little effort.
Yeah.
And motorcycling has been similar. Like, I'll see some, like a large or tall bike, and I think, and I used to think, I can't ride that. And then I learn one foot down or different tricks to move it around. And then I try it. I'm like, wait, that's it? It's so easy. It wasn't intuitive, but it was, now that I know what to do, it's so easy.
And what I like about, your personality and what you put out online is that you do share kind of that vulnerability of like, I was nervous about this. I didn't know if I could handle it, but then you go through the training and you come out the other side and like, yeah, this is great and fulfilling. And I really enjoyed it,
Mm-hmm.
where does that come from where you're kind of used to sharing your struggles as well as your successes? Because obviously, you can edit a video to say like, yeah, I'd mastered this class. It was no big deal. Like it was totally easy. But you have some vulnerability to your videos, which I think is a welcome kind of angle. Where does that come from?
I think I was just raised not to lie. That is just, it's going to bite you in the butt.
Sure.
And plus, like, I think about the people in the class that I'm doing it with. Like, I'm like, if they see this video and they see me tell a different story, they're going to know. And there's a worse embarrassment in someone knowing that you're blatantly lying than there is in just being honest. Plus, I find that those are the people I gravitate to. The people who lie and say that they're good at everything or that nothing's difficult, like, they're just obnoxious to be around. And I mean, you can tell when people lie. Like, some people don't realize that. Some people just continue lying and they haven't learned the consequences of it. But I think I've learned that when people lie, I don't like them. I don't want to be around them. I don't trust them. And when people are honest, I admire them even more. So I think I just took that lesson to heart.
No, I love that. And what I found too is that usually the people that are talking about how great they are, how easy things were, when the rubber hits the road, for lack of a better term, it might be a different story. And the people who are actually skilled are pretty chill and do instead of talk.
Exactly.
Cause yeah, I mean, you've trained with some big deal people.
Yes. Jocelyn Snow, she's amazing. She was actually just been professional rider in just about every field you can think of. Wow. Since she started riding since she was a little kid. And only in the past like several years has she gotten into adventure riding. And now she's participated in the BMW off-roading competition, and she's tiny. She can't even touch the ground on her GS 1250, but she does amazing things on that bike, better than some people can do on mini bikes. So Jocelyn Snow, she's amazing. Jerry Palladino, retired motor instructor. He's been teaching civilians for the past 25 years. And before that, he was teaching motor cops slow speed skills on big bikes. And then some online instructors like Motojitsu, Dan the Fireman. I've done a little bit of practice with them. Oh, and Champ School, that was really cool. That's it's like a track day, but it's with a group of professional racers. Like, my very first track day, I was very unimpressed. The instructors were like 20-year-old boys.
Oh, geez.
And they barely got any attention. And I remember leaving like, I feel like I got 5 minutes of feedback and I just rode around like a hamster. But Champ School, and that's something. And this other track day that I'm doing this weekend, Precision Track Day, both of those have multiple instructors, and we'll have, I think the ratio is maybe like one instructor for 4 students, and they break you up in those groups. So you get a lot of attention from professional racers. So it's like, okay, this is valuable feedback, and you get a lot of it.
Yeah.
So that you get your money's worth.
Well, in addition to all the training and classes that you do, and that you all, post bits about those on YouTube and stuff, you take a lot of adventures. I mean, I haven't watched all the videos, but Key West, across the country, Sturgis twice, I believe.
Yes.
Once starting in Arizona. I'm sure I'm missing a ton of adventures or whatever.
Those are the main ones.
Those are the big
Those
hitter,
are the good
hitters.
ones. Yeah, there are some that were total duds, like me just riding to Florida to my mom's house. So that one I'm going to leave that off the homepage. If people see it, they see it, but I'm not going to make an extra effort for people to see it.
Yeah. So what was your first like big trip, and what was kind of your driving force to take a big trip like that?
My first trip that wasn't quite destination based. It was, I would say, like motor vlogger based. I visited Her Two Wheels in Ohio and circled back down and visited Lolly and Revzilla headquarters in Pennsylvania. And that was on a Harley Street Glide. That was not my bike.
Hmm.
I wanted to do it because at that point, I had been full time on YouTube for a little less than a year. And my videos were all like bike reviews and MSF courses. And I just kind of started to get bored with what I was doing. And I realized that I didn't watch videos like what I was making.
Hmm.
I was watching people taking road trips. So people like Her Two Wheels, Megan Captine, Itchy Boots, and I realized like this is way more fun. Like if I could make videos going on a fun road trip, I would like that a lot more than bike reviews.
Hmm.
So that was really the thing. I saw other people doing it, got inspired, and wanted to try it. And at that time, I just had a Triumph Street Triple R,
Hmm.
and my back hurts after about half an hour on that bike. So I didn't want to take it on a road trip. So I just reached out to the bike manufacturers that I had a relationship with and asked, do you have a road trip friendly bike that I can take on my first road trip?
Yeah.
And Harley was like, we got you. We're going to put you on the biggest bike we've got. Even though your bike at home is less than half this big.
Right.
Have fun. Good luck. And yeah, and it was so much fun. It was addicting. It was, in hindsight, it wasn't the funnest road trip. It makes for a better video though, but I didn't realize it at the time. But I like about 80% of that road trip was riding through a coastal flood warning.
Oh, jeez.
So yeah, it rained almost the whole time, almost the whole trip.
Man.
Really hard.
Yeah.
I remember being so scared, and it was about a 2,000-mile trip, and I didn't listen. Like now I listen to music or audiobooks while I ride, but that trip I didn't listen to anything but directions. It was just pure silence because I was so afraid for my life. I just wanted to focus. And I probably, in hindsight, should have just turned around, but I kept thinking it'd be over. So I'm like, I'm looping around eventually. But it ended nicely. It ended with a nice sunny day and visiting another motovlogger, Infinite Rider in South Carolina, I think. So it was fun.
Yeah. So it made it worth it all in the end.
Yes, it did.
That's not the only time you've ran into weather either.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong. It seems like it happens every time to you. So
yes,
you have great luck weather-wise.
Uh-huh.
But what I love is you know when to push through it and just say, it's rain or it's weather or whatever. But you also know when to maybe you shouldn't. Like, what was it? The dust storm through the U.S. or something?
Yeah. So actually that one was luck. I was actually going to keep going, but a local warned me not to. He's like, "You're going to die." I'm like, "All right, well, if you live here and I don't even know what this is. I've never experienced winds like this, so I'll just pull over now."
Yeah.
But I was crossing the U.S. That was my first cross-country trip. I've only had one so far, but I say first because I plan on doing more.
Nice.
And apparently, I didn't know this, but apparently in the center of the U.S., there's this like belt called the Tornado Alley.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's like the windiest, most concentrated place for tornadoes in the world.
Yeah, it's no joke.
I had no idea. So I was crossing that part, and I was crossing it in the very one spot that is the absolute windiest in the entire belt. So I'm like, okay. And it started out just kind of funny. Like I was seeing tumbleweeds. I'm like, oh, tumbleweeds are real.
It's a real thing.
Not just the cartoon.
That's what I said too when I first saw one. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, right? And then the wind, it just started hurting my head to hold my neck up, and my bike was going at an angle. Like I was riding straight, but my bike was at an angle. But I noticed there were still cars on the road. It was a bright sunny day. So I'm like, maybe this is just a little annoying. I'll just keep going. I remember pulling over at a gas station and having to hold my bike up, like stand against my bike as I was fueling it to keep it from blowing over.
Yikes.
But I still kept going, and the winds just kept getting stronger and stronger. And eventually I see like this big reddish dust, foggy looking thing in the distance. And I'm like, I actually can't remember now if I already knew about this at this point or if I looked it up later. But it was a dust storm and rode through that. It was still visible though. Some of them can get so thick that they get pitch black, but this one I could still see through it. And then it was gone. And then far in the distance, I saw like dark gray clouds. I'm like, ugh. So now I have all this wind and now I'm about to go through a storm. Let me pull over and put on my rain gear. Mm-hmm. So I get to a gas station. I start putting on my rain gear. It's like it's flopping all over the place. It actually flew away. I had to like ran to grab it. And that's at that moment, this Native American man comes out of nowhere and he's like, "Are you about to ride in that?" I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Don't do it. It's not worth your life." I'm like, "Okay,
wow,
whatever you say, Mr. Random Man." And there was a Best Western right next to that gas station. So I just pulled into it right then and there. And it's a good thing I did because once I checked into the hotel room, I got a text on my phone, like an Amber Alert alarm sound.
Oh, yeah.
That said like caution, wind advisory, do not drive.
Oh, wow.
So I'm like, okay, good timing. I'll just take a shower and relax and eat some cookies.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about that trip. I think, you're based outside of Atlanta. So you went all the way from the East Coast to the West Coast and then back, right?
Yeah, I really want it to be coast to coast.
Yeah, that's impressive. That's
just
impressive.
Just for the poetry of it. That's literally the only reason.
Can you tell me about your route a little bit?
Yeah. So my route, well, I went to Tybee Island. That's where my coast started.
Okay.
But I kind of justified that as being like a trial run because I had a lot of new gear and accessories that I had never used before. So I thought I'll do that the weekend before I leave for the whole trip. So went to Tybee Island and then came back home. And that was like my test of the gear. Mm-hmm. And then I was home for several days and then I continued on. And mostly my route was actually dodging weather. So I could tell it was February. So some places were cold. So I really just picked routes based on like, okay, it's cold here. It's not here. Let me go down here. But then this way south, it's actually cold. So let me go north where it's actually warmer this time. But then I would change it according to like a dust storm or apparently this was also the time where there were a bunch of blizzards happening in California. So,
oh, geez.
I know it was crazy. I'm like, is the world ending right now or what is going on? So I tried dodging those as well. That was really the route. And then every now and then, if weather was cooperating and I wasn't too tired, I would avoid highways and get a nicer route. But I did more so on the way back because on my way there, I wanted to do it as fast as possible. So, but still within like being comfortable. I didn't want to do iron butt. Mm-hmm. So I was like, if I can go across from coast to coast in 7 days, that just sounds really cool. So let me try it. So that was the goal. But on the way back, I took like literally 5 weeks to get back home with all my stops and routes and also backtracking, trying to dodge blizzards and then also trying to dodge the high winds again on my way back. And then a tornado. There was also a tornado on the way back. So you've
hit like every single. It's almost like it's almost like biblical. You hit like every single weather problem.
I know, it was insane.
What did you plan on having that trip back be 5 weeks or no?
No, I thought it would take like 3 weeks max, but it didn't. I got home a lot later than planned.
But because you work for yourself and you have your own YouTube channel full time and everything,
yes,
you have the freedom to do that,
Exactly. And it's not like I was just playing around. Like I was recording a 12 video series. So I'm like, it's okay. This is for work.
It's for work. So,
yeah.
When, during that trip, when you're dodging literally tornadoes and dust storms and blizzards and everything, you seem like you're just so used to like, and accepting of like rolling with the punches and just audibling and moving along. Is that something that you've like always had as like an innate skill, or is that something that you've learned through motorcycling?
No, I think I've always been like that. Just because I remember my family always telling me I've been very disciplined even as a little kid. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think that's just how I was raised. Like if you want something, why would you stop just because it gets hard? Like, don't you want what you want? Like, if I want chocolate lava cake, I'm not going to not eat it just because I don't know, my stomach hurts or because like there's something standing in front of it. I've already decided I want the chocolate lava cake. I'm going to get that chocolate lava cake. Like that is just the weirdest question people ask me is, what motivates you to keep going? I'm like, for me, it's like, what motivates you to stop? Like,
Yeah.
don't you want what you want? That's kind of my thinking.
Yeah. No, that's cool though. I mean, it reminds me of kind of a quote that I've said before. It's, if you go to England or London and you wait for the rain to go away to go do something, you're never going to do it. You just kind of have to learn to roll with it, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Plus, I am recording this and putting it on YouTube. So if I give up or I stop, then I don't have my income.
Right.
I don't have a video to make. So I'm like, well, at the very least, it's for the sake of embarrassment and also just like getting a job done. Keep going.
Right. So let's talk about jumping over to YouTube and doing that full time. Speaking of, you wanted something and you went for it. What was the decision process behind, leaving your full time job behind and pursuing YouTube full time?
I think again, because whatever I do, I just get obsessed with it. So even though at the time for several years YouTube was a hobby, I was still very diligent about it. So I was very consistent with it. I would take breaks though. About once a year, I would take a 1 or 2 month break.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kept getting instances where it was very comparable or surpassed what I was making at my office job.
Really?
And not by a lot, but it might be like one video that took me 5 hours to make or less was the equivalent of like 2 weeks at my office job. And it was very inconsistent. So I thought, well, some people do this full time and they have businesses, and maybe this isn't just a luck thing. Maybe this is a strategy thing. So I just started looking up people who taught about YouTube. And there's a lot of crap out there. Let me just say that. I'm not going to call out names, but oh my gosh, it is insane how many people with no experience are teaching people how to build business off YouTube, and they haven't even done it themselves. But eventually I found Daryl Eves, he's a YouTube strategist who actually, he works with YouTube. Like they've been hiring him for the past 4 or 5 years. And he works, people, like you see his channel and it's just a bunch of live streams. So people don't realize how knowledgeable he actually is. But he's behind the scenes on a lot of very large, successful channels. The Chosen is one of them. Mr. Beast.
Oh, geez. Okay. Yeah.
Rebuild Rescue. That's a channel about like planes, and they have like at least over 1 million subscribers. Same with Matt's Off-Road Recovery. He's not just a strategist. I think he's partners with Matt on that channel. Bikes and Beers is another one that he's the strategist behind.
Mm-hmm.
So I eventually, this was actually, I went full time though. But my first year full time on YouTube was pretty tight.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wait, let me backtrack a bit because you said,
yeah,
how did I go full time? So when I decided to quit my office job, I had just gotten so burnt out and busy doing both, and the channel, like I could just barely keep up with emails about like, hey, do you want to come to this press event or do this class or do this? Just all this stuff. I was like, I can't keep doing both. I have to do one or the other. And at that point, YouTube numbers weren't sustainable for a job,
mm-hmm.
but I hadn't spent a single dollar that I had made off of YouTube. I had been saving it in a separate LLC account,
mm-hmm.
and I'd also not been spending much of my own money. I'd been saving up, thinking like, if I ever do quit my office job, like I want to have a big cushion in case I ever quit and I do YouTube full time and I don't make money.
Yeah, for sure.
Right away. So it was more like that. I was just so burnt out. And I thought if I could dedicate full time to this, I think I could make it sustainable. And that first year was really tight. I was posting videos twice a week. And it turned out though that I was actually pretty close to matching my office job income. But I was very tired and I was like, I can't quite keep this up. Like I'm not doing something right. And then eventually that's when I found Daryl at the end of that first year going full time.
Mm-hmm.
And then he has a 2-month course. So I took that, and that's what's taken my channel from a struggling job to a comfortable business that I can pay myself at. And I'm like, I'm not going back to my office job ever.
Man, that's impressive though. Again, that's a dream a lot of people have, and it's not easy owning your own business, YouTube or otherwise. So congratulations, and you should obviously be very proud of yourself with that.
Thank you.
But what do you think is what do you think would surprise most people about being a YouTuber or a content creator with motorcycles that maybe happens behind the scenes that people don't think about?
Um, I think that people think that I ride a lot more than I actually do. But most of the time, and I've calculated this, about 80% of my time I'm just at a computer, and it looks like I'm out riding every day because that's the social media, but I'm not. I'm mostly just at a computer.
Yeah.
And I think anytime I've mentioned about this being a business or a job or work, I'll get comments like, but it's not a real job, or, but it's just, you're just having fun all the time. It's like, I mean, that's the 20% that you see on camera, but you're basically producing your own online show. And there's a lot that goes behind the scenes in order to, one, sustain a business and also produce a show. It's still fun, but it is a business.
It's a fun job, but it's still a job.
Yes.
Well, one of the fun parts, I have to imagine, is being able to ride so many different kinds of motorcycles kind of whenever you want.
Yeah, I like that part.
Has there been a bike or a kind of motorcycle that surprised you that you thought, I'm not going to be into this, and then it flipped on you like that?
Yeah, Harleys.
Really?
They were, yeah, I did not like Harleys at all before I got on one.
Mm-hmm.
But getting on them for my road trips was mainly because they were the easiest to work with what I was doing. Just being able to take a bike that was already set up to be packed up. Like I didn't need extra baggage or anything like that. And they were willing to let me borrow a bike for 1 or 2 week stretches at a time. So that was the main reason I was riding so many Harleys for my road trips at first. And now I love baggers. Like I used to hate them. I used to hate the way they looked, the way they sounded, and now I love all those things about them.
Yeah, I mean they're built for cruising and going down the road for a long time. I mean, I remember the first time I was on one. My dad worked for Harley Davidson, a dealership here in Chicago for a little while, and we rented a couple of bikes. And I actually borrowed a Street Glide, and I was like 22 years old, had never ridden a 700-pound motorcycle before, and it was 5 o'clock Friday traffic in Chicago. And he's like,
oh no,
jump on the bike and follow me. And I'm like, oh my God, like, am I going to die? Am I going to survive this? And we ended up having a really nice weekend up in Wisconsin and stuff, but it's a little bit intimidating until you get used to it, no matter how big or how small you are, they're big bikes. So, but they are super comfortable. And have you taken a Harley both times to Sturgis?
Yes. And both those times on Sturgis, I was on a Heritage. So I was on one of their smaller baggers. That some people say it isn't a bagger, but I'm like, if it's got bags on it, I'm calling it a bagger.
By definition, they're there. So
yes.
Let's talk about your trip to Sturgis, or your trips, plural, to Sturgis. What made you want to go there?
I think it's just classic. It's just a bucket list motorcycle thing.
Yeah.
To do. Yeah, that's it. I was like, it's just, and I think, let me think I don't think I knew how beautiful the roads are out there though, before I decided to go. I think I learned that after. And now I want to go every year just because it's some of the most beautiful riding I've ever seen around Sturgis.
Yeah. Yeah. And in one of your videos, you talk about how you went alone, and everybody was like, in your life was like, maybe you shouldn't, or maybe you should have somebody come with or whatever. And obviously people think of, 750,000 biker dudes all over the place slamming beer and all that, but there's a lot more to it, right?
Yeah. So, and I know that because I've been a rider for several years already at that point. But a lot of people in the comment section and my family are very concerned for me doing road trips alone or going to like these Harley events. it might have been a different story if I had gone out to the bars and clubs late at night. But I didn't. I just stuck to daytime things. I was in bed like every night by like 8 o'clock. I was still on East Coast time and just tired from the hot ride all day. But I wanted to show that it's actually not how some people think. I think it's still important though to be safe and not take risks. And like for instance, there was a man that I was talking to at a gas station. He asked me if I wanted to join him and his friends. And if I was a large man, I definitely would have said yes. But just to be extra safe, I said no, even though I don't think he had any malintentions. But yeah, so I think people have a certain perspective about solo women riders, about how it's very dangerous for them. And I think people outside of the motorcycling space think that a lot of motorcyclists are, I don't know, delinquents or something. And I don't think anyone believes me when I say that's not true. So I just had to show it with my footage.
Yeah. Has there been anything in your kind of motorcycling career, I guess we could call it, that has pleasantly surprised you about the motorcycling community, or something that maybe you didn't expect in a good way?
Maybe the fact that how welcoming people are. Like I have been asked too if I've ever experienced sexism in the riding community, and if anything, I think I experienced that from people who don't ride,
Really?
or who aren't very avid riders but have some vague interest in motorcycling, and not in person. I think just the fact that I'm on the internet. So that's when I'll get comments about like the bike's too big for you, women shouldn't ride. But in person, I don't feel like that's the case. In person, I feel like, and if we're on the topic of sexism, men specifically are actually very respectful and about me riding. And I don't mean just respectful in a term like, oh, they're nice. I mean respectful in the term where they're like, hey, good for you. Like they're like glad to like see it happening.
Well, that's cool. I mean, it's good to hear that there is positivity there, and hopefully that'll change some people's minds as you go along. Have you gotten any stories from either viewers or fans or even friends and family that you have inspired to have them start riding?
Yes. Come to think of it, I do have a few people who have said they want to start riding now but haven't gotten to it yet. And I did have like my a few of my friends in college, a couple of them still live nearby. They're in Seattle, so they're on the other side of the country. But they took the MSF course and they got their husbands to join them. So it was like 4 of them across the country taking the MSF course, and they said, we've been watching you doing all this riding for years, and we want to join you. So they took the MSF course. Unfortunately, only one of them was interested in it, but I think she's all about it. I think she's like showing me bikes she wants to buy, which would be amazing. I'm like, this is literally like I had like 3 close friends in college, and they were the ones who wanted to take the MSF course. So that was really neat.
Nice. Yeah, that's got to be fulfilling, that you're inspiring people to live their lives more, just like you have.
Yeah, I hope so. I actually don't post about it much on my personal stuff, like my personal Facebook or Instagram. So maybe some people don't know, but every now and then I do get a message from someone I knew from like a mutual friend years ago that I never talked to, but we're Facebook friends, and they said, hey, is this you? I just saw you on YouTube. I just discovered you on YouTube. So something like that. But yeah, I don't promote it much on my personal stuff.
So is there kind of a big divide then between like, online versus like family friends kind of life then?
Yeah, I think so. Like, most of my friends, like no one in my family rides not that I interact with regularly anyways. And most of my friends don't ride. So yeah, I would say there's quite a divide, because part of, I think some people, when they get into riding, they do end up meeting a lot of people who also ride. But because I did this with YouTube at the same time, I've been pretty focused on like press events or just sitting at my computer editing. So I haven't met as many people who ride. I've gone to some like group events and things, but a lot of times I just don't end up having time, or I'm out of town when they're doing events, so I don't go.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know a ton of people who ride outside of the YouTube space.
I think just as an adult anyway, it's hard to find friends with
True.
the same interests,
Mhm,
you know?
mhm.
And so, and when you're riding, especially if you're riding by yourself, you know, it's kind of hard to find people who want to ride with you and all that. So totally makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, not everyone's available to go across the country for 6 weeks.
Yeah, that too. One of the things you said in a video though that has stuck with me, that it's been interesting and it has kind of lived in my mind, is that you try to plan adventures around your everyday life. So when you do get to ride, you kind of make it an adventure. How do you strike that balance between, you know, having to sit at the computer and edit and deal with business stuff and admin and all that, and just saying screw it and just being able to go out and ride?
Well, I think because I almost also have to if I want to make a video about a trip, but I could just as easily make a video sitting at my desk talking to the camera in my office.
Sure.
So it's really kind of up to me what I want to make a video on. And if I want that video to come out like 6 months from now or next month, I better go now, or I have to time it according to that. I think it used to be more kind of, I would just ride where I felt like it and then I'd make a video.
Mm-hmm.
But I found that wasn't quite sustainable. Like the road trip videos aren't cheap to make.
Oh, for sure.
Because I don't camp.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'll stay in hotels. So I realized I had to be more, now anyways, I have to be more methodical about those road trips so that I'm not losing money off of them. Yeah. So now I'd say it's more methodical than it was. It's more business first. It's going to be fun anyways, so that doesn't have to be a priority.
Yeah, makes it a little bit easier. So
yeah.
Well, last question I have for you. You know, you've been riding for multiple years now. You've done a lot of adventures, a lot of training, and you're still loving motorcycling. What is it about motorcycling that makes it so special to you?
I don't know. It's just something in my brain that makes it addicting.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also like I've been doing some like mindful meditation exercises. That was part of like this insomnia course I took, and it feels really good to do those things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think motorcycling does those things, but you don't realize, you're not like opening a meditation app. You're just going for a ride, and you don't realize like, oh, you are actually doing what the app tells you to do. It tells you to focus on your breath, focus on what you're doing. Don't be distracted. Focus on where your hands are, your feet are. Focus on the present. So I think maybe that's what's happening while I'm riding. That's that I'm kind of starved for, is just being present and not realizing that I was starved for it. So I think people who are either like overwhelmed with duties or work, or they just have trouble shutting their brain off, or they're just constantly thinking or planning, overthinkers, I think, would love riding because it forces you to, in a way, meditate in a fun way.
No, I love it. I agree completely. That presence of mind is, you know, you can't worry about anything else. You know, there's too much going on in front of you that you have to focus. So, So,
yeah.
Well, Doodle, thank you so much for spending some time with us. Really appreciate it. Love your videos. Love your mindset on riding.
Thank you for having me.
I'd be lying if I was saying you weren't a little bit of an inspiration to just go for it and do something, you know, motorcycle related. So
you can do it.
I appreciate it. So
if I can, you can. Believe me.
I think I got to find some chocolate lava cake now too for dessert for dinner or something, because that's been on my mind since you said it. So
yes.
So all right. Well, thank you, Doodle. We'll talk soon.
Talk soon. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Driven to Ride. Interact with us and check out full unedited conversations, photos, interviews, video interviews, plus other goodies on YouTube or Instagram at Driven to Ride Podcast. Or you can check us out at driventoridepodcast.com. And make sure you leave us a rating and review from wherever you get your podcasts too. If you have an idea for an episode or a guest, or you want to invite us out on an adventure, email us hello@driventoridepodcast.com. Driven to Ride is wholly owned by Flint Rock LLC, made possible with help from Matthew Miles, and written, hosted, and produced by me, Mark Long. We'll see you out there.